Hey, welcome back to the Growth Engine with Ryan and Trice. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, Trice, I'm ready to get going today. We
Awesome.
have to work hard. We got to top that last episode. If you'd asked me if we were going to come out of the gates on our first episode with a topic that was going to kill it, and we were both going to win Academy Awards, I would have said no way.
Well, I don't know about the Academy part, but the topic was shooting first, man. I mean, it's a big topic. I'm sure we didn't cover everything of it, but looking forward to something else today. I know you said you have something juicy for us.
I do. That last episode, in case you missed it, you don't want to miss it. Go back, pick it up, start from the beginning. Okay. It was when and how to hire agencies and fractional CMOs and full-time CMOs, really. But fascinating topic. And then today we got to top it. So I'm going to start with our topic today. And I want you to hold on because it gets really good. Today's topic is going to bring up some of the best tips I give CEOs and business owners to grow their companies. It's not a part of my program. It's just more of philosophy and thinking. But today we're going to talk about owning things in the company. Okay. So owning things in the company. And I'm talking about things like processes, projects, software. And I'm going to explain this so it makes sense.
Okay? Yeah. Cause this is a big one. This is a broad one. So yeah. Talk through it. Like, so tell me a little more about what you're thinking here.
Okay. So typically start talking to a business owner and he or she says, hey, I know there's some broken things in my company and we need to start fixing these. And they usually name like one or two things, right? Mm-hmm. And when I get down to it and we start peeling back the layers, what we find is there is not a couple of things. There's a whole bunch of things.
Sure.
And a lot of times it's because the owner has not quit doing so much of the things. He's trying to do it all himself still. Right. And so he never delegated. He's a control person. He's wanting to make sure the quality doesn't suffer. I've been there. I know what that feels like. You 100%. Don't want to you don't want to let go of it. You don't trust people because you've tried to do it before and they just don't have your experience and knowledge. We're going to talk about that piece today. But the number one thing is if somebody in your company can't own it, as the business owner, you need to think like this. If somebody can't own the thing that you want to instill or bring into your company, don't do it. You don't have the time and capacity to, quote, own something new coming into your business. So don't do it until you can find a person in your company to do it. So let's start with number one.
Yep.
Owning processes. So you may not even have processes in your company at this point. And we're talking about it. Yeah. Right. I didn't. So the term itself just sounded like paperwork to me. It sounded like something I didn't want to do. Right. And I finally started doing this piece and I started understanding the why behind it. And then when we created a process, I started getting into my head that, hey, I can't own all of these processes and keep them all up to date. And so I started assigning the people that were probably the most tied to what that process was. So it could have been a department manager, could have been a director, right. and it could be a person actually that does that thing that the process is about every day, and so they're close to it. They can be the ones that you assign to own it, and that just means they're in charge of it, right? They're just in charge of that thing's success is really what it means. Okay, right. So owning processes. Have you owned a process or own something in a company or position you worked in, Trice?
Yeah, like this is a great subject because we all hate talking about process. Right? You're just like, this is sucks. Like I want to do why'd you come today? Well, I want to do great shit. That's all. That's one of my goals. I want to do good shit. That's it. So but as you mature in your career, right, and you get in leadership roles, you realize you're like, hey, if I can't document the process through which we do these things, and I'm not saying it's has to be, step by step. I mean, it is step by step as far as how you do things, but it doesn't mean that it dictates strategy all the time. And you realize you have to do it. Otherwise, like if you lose people, it just knowledge just walks out the door. Or to your point, you're the leader, you've been doing this thing, but now you need to bring somebody up or bring somebody in. They're going to take something over. They need to own it. And they make it their own, bring improvements to it, document it, whatever it is, because you can't be responsible for everything. The more you decide you have to be, the worse it is, because your bandwidth is just limited. You're like, I can't bring in new things. And as your organization grows, that's bad. So yeah, when you're the CMO, you're supposedly, like all marketing process, you're the owner, but really you're not. You're the champion of all of them potentially, but you're not necessarily, like all the Lean Six Sigmas of the world, right? They have all these different people in the iterations of like who does what, but so you might be the champion, but you're not the owner of the process. Somebody else on your team probably is. So yeah, I mean, it's a really important part. And you're right. Most business owners just ignore most of this stuff. They're just like, hey, I know how we do it, and I'll teach somebody when they bring them in, when I bring them in. And that's really the whole extent of it.
Yeah. So, yeah. They oftentimes, the owner will say, I'm overwhelmed. I'm the one, I feel like I have to do everything myself. That's the term. I got to do it all myself. Like nobody helps me. And they get all worked up, and I could tell they're frustrated. And I'm like, yeah, I bet so. And I understand that feeling. That's because you haven't delegated anything, have you?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because he doesn't think that you can possibly have in your head what he knows. And to transfer those years of knowledge is too much pain.
Yeah.
And so this is where processes begins to really help. It's like, okay, well, then let's get it out of your head. Let's put it on paper. Let's break down the steps that you go through, Mr. Professional.
Yeah.
And put it down on paper as if you were going to use that process, that written process, as a guide to train somebody to do what you do and to know what you know.
Yes.
And when we first do that, it's kind of like, oh boy, you can tell that they have a little bit of anxiety, right? And when they get one done, and then we go, okay, now who is going to own this? And they get really scared. But we actually, almost always is somebody there who is totally capable of doing whatever that is.
100%.
Okay, you need to train them on that process. And then they immediately go, okay, and then they want to go to whatever next topic it is. And I'm like, no. You need to go to your calendar right now and fill in the date and the time and send an invite to the person you're going to train. I want a 1 to 2 hour training on that process right now. When we talk about gaining traction, that's what we're talking about. Like, don't procrastinate. That's it today, because if you can start doing this today, tomorrow you will start to gain time back. Yes. And you can be a leader. You can actually spend your days leading, not doing everybody's work.
Yeah. If you think about it, like the value you bring as a business owner, right, is one, operational knowledge. Like just 100%, you understand the way the operation moves better than anybody else, theoretically, right? Especially in the early days of your business, where your team is you and a handful of people, or maybe even 10, right? But as your business gets bigger than that, right, like there are other people might have as much operational knowledge as you, or at least in their corner of the world. But that's definitely not true when it comes to things like finance or HR or marketing, or sales, where it's not the operation of the business itself. It is these supporting groups around it, where you hopefully have hired great people that have all the operational knowledge inside of those silos, and they're really the ones that are responsible. But the reason this is so important for you is where your time is best spent is with your people and strategy, because the strategy's in your mind. Don't waste your time, punching keys and pushing paper around, like doing things that other people can help you get done. Your time is more valuable than that. It's better with your people. It's better with customers, and it's better thinking of how to grow and improve your business. And once you get a lot of that off your plate and your bandwidth frees up, man, it is amazing how your mind will change. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have all these new ideas about how we can change our business and grow, because you've freed up the space of your mind, frankly. And in a lot of ways, it's so powerful. It's great that we're bringing this up today, because that's a great point that leaders often forget.
Yeah. And that transition, if they went from owning it at an early stage and growing the business out, then they have to get out of the cycle where their value is doing the creating. They're, they're, they're,
100%.
they're helping deliver the product or service, right? They
Yes.
have to go from that stage and they have to morph into a business owner or even sometimes an entrepreneur. And and so at certain point, the value of that business owner is mentor, is
Mhm.
is being other people's champion of learning what they learned. And
Yes.
and that is something that doesn't happen overnight. It usually happens over several years, actually, where they start to give up things and they start to become a trainer, a mentor. And really their job is at some point is to not touch anything.
Yeah.
It's to
Yeah.
not be in the weeds on anything, actually. It's to be there to support everybody else who is or managing those people.
Yeah, I know you're a big advocate of this, and it's something I really love about when we talk about this is when a leader transitions from being a doer to being an inspirational part of their business, somebody that people want to follow and that is great at leading and great at mentoring and great at developing people and empowerment and all the things that you want. I think that we all, when we go into our careers, we all want our CEO or our manager to be like that for us, to really value us. I mean, that's obviously a huge part of where we're at right now, I think, as a culture. And you as a CEO, when you it's a luxury, frankly, when you get to the place where in your business where you can do those kinds of things versus constantly being, bogged down by the doing of operations and the hand holding and the micromanagement. Frankly, your culture shifts and you become a place where people want to work because people don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want to be treated like children. They want to be empowered. They want to feel like they've added value. They're doing a great job. And also, they probably have skills to bring to the table that you've never even thought of before, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
And I love this because it's such a big part of that shift from being a small entrepreneurial business to being something that is employee focused and really has legs to grow and move fast, if done right.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a balance that's tough later on, which is the CEO, he delegates everything. He now is that, person who gains more respect actually by being the person we're talking about, where he's supportive and
Yeah.
he's the people's champion, right? He's a real leader. Um, versus the guy who checks out. I see
love the people. The
guy
people
gets too
champion
far.
got me. I was laughing to him. Like, that's a good one. That's good.
Did you know I was going with that? And the guy checks out. He's on the golf course all the time. There's a certain level of trust by still being in the business, staying in the business,
Yeah.
and doing the things that is in your defined role now as a leader. Than it is like, okay, I'm not touching anything. I'm not working on anything anymore. I'm here to support. Oh, I'm going to support you from the golf course or on vacations every other month. Like I see the extreme happen in that thing. I'm like, back it up. If you're going to be gone that much, you need to hire somebody to run the company.
Yes.
But and people listening to this show, a lot of them are probably saying right now, I want that problem.
Well, yeah. Why wouldn't you? I mean, isn't that your goal? Like, I want to grow a business to a point where I can comfortably not retire, but comfortably hire somebody else who to fill the role of day-to-day manager and to be in the weeds more and maybe not necessarily always be the inspirational person, so I can do that part and they can do that other part. Yeah, that's great. You're right.
So,
Good problem to have.
So on the topic of owning processes, before I go to the next thing you should own, is break it down for you. Is processes are great for onboarding new people and training, right? So when you first bring that to somebody and you say, I need you to write stuff down, I need you to be in charge of this process, they immediately start thinking, oh, so that they can fire me and hire somebody in my place. It's how you frame these things that make a difference, because your intent as a business owner actually isn't always that. Your intent is to build a system and processes that are ever improving. And so by starting that process, it gives you something to improve on. So you need to explain that to the people that you have help you do it, because you, the business owner, aren't supposed to write all the processes. You may help with some, but it's hey, if we do really good at this process, we're going to grow and I'm going to need you to train somebody to do what you do. Let's go ahead and start that training guide now by writing out a process for this. So I need you to write this process out as if you were getting ready to train somebody on it, because just, it might happen in the next, quarter that we have to do that. And then we'll already have it done. It won't be such a project.
Yeah. Well, also that gives people to be clear about what they want their career aspirations to be like. Because you're like, hey, look, you're really, really good at this already, but we think you can grow into another type of role and have more responsibility. But to do that, I've got to document this really well so that we can teach somebody new when they come in to take this over, so you can do other things, because I value you and trust you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you the new stuff, and the new person can do the stuff we've been doing because it's teachable.
Yeah. You're looking at my show notes because trust is my next point.
It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite topics.
Well, trust is a really overused word, right? It's a generic word, right? So one of the things that, employees say to you, like, I wish you trusted me more, or I wish my manager trusted me. Like, they're getting all the signals that they're not being trusted.
For sure.
So when you bring to them this idea that they're going to be in charge of, you're in charge of this process. This process is how we deliver this product or service. And this is this is a key product or service that we're delivering to our customers. This is one of the most important things. I'm putting you in charge of this. You know why? Because I trust you. And I know that you can take care of this baby and you can keep it up to date. And I know that this thing will be the best thing in our company, because it's going to continue to allow us to develop this service and improve it and make it better than our competitions. And I need you to be the champion of this. I need you to teach it, promote it. And I need you to make sure it's always right priced. We're profitable at it. I need you to take this thing. I trust you. And when you frame it like that, the difference between you taking something to them and saying, I need you to write a process on this, and them thinking they're going to be let go, versus what they think now, which is, wow, he really does trust me. I'm going to write this process and it's going to be badass. Here it goes.
Yeah. You're exactly right. I actually wrote something on LinkedIn about this within the last maybe couple of weeks, and just about trust being earned. And often people say, well, trust is earned and they got to come in and prove themselves. Well, the truth of the matter is they're qualified for the job you hired them for because they've put in the work already. So you should trust them day one. Now, sure, you're not going to give away the company secrets on day one, but there's value in somebody having already developed themselves to a point where they're qualified for the kind of job you want them for. And instead of making them earn your trust, you need to put them right in a position of opportunity right then, and frame it just exactly the way you just described, because it's so powerful to say to somebody, you have everything that we need. You have everything going for you. You are the perfect candidate for us. And because you are, we're going to give you this responsibility to partner with your manager to be able to do these things and grow with the company and help the company grow. I mean, it's so powerful to frame it that way, especially for somebody new coming in who does bring new ideas. I mean, the trap I tell people when they're new all the time is, don't walk in the door and start firing ideas, because one, people aren't going to hear you yet because they don't know you from Adam. You haven't built that rapport. It's not trust, it's rapport. And two, you don't know our business. So you know yourself and you have a lot of skill, but you don't know our business yet. But when you do, then you're really going to be able to say, I love doing these things. I think these are great ideas. And now I see how they work with the business. And now you really have value. So your trust creates value at that point. So yeah, I love your description of that, because it's exactly right.
Yeah. So owning a process is a huge way to say, I trust you. And when framed right, it works really well. And we're talking about owning things because as the growth engine, is getting established so that you can grow and scale your business, in a healthy way, offloading things off your plate is one of the first steps so that you can take the time to do the things that you really need to do to grow the business. Because you're probably not, if you're not growing right now, you're probably not, or if you're not growing fast. Right. And so that's kind of a step one thing. And it's important to do something along with this first owning processes thing, which is on the process itself, right under the title, put owner, and you put the owner's name so that it's clear who owns this, so that everybody else who has input on how to make that better can go to that owner, not the boss, not the CEO. And he can refer back if they do and say, well, Trice owns that. You should go talk to him. Like he's the one who's in charge of that process. 100%. So that's delegating, right? Delegation and elevation, right? And so that's important to do that piece of it. As a manager, managing the people who own processes, your job is to check in with that, at least quarterly, if not, monthly on a one-on-one, where you're making sure those processes aren't just put on a table, on a shelf, and not used, and that they are advancing, improving. And that's the way you can reiterate that it's important to you. It's important to the company that is done. So that piece of it is crucial. And then on your job description, a lot of people don't touch those job descriptions until it's time to hire somebody to replace them. Those job descriptions they're a moving target. They should always be improving.
Yes.
So your job description and roles and what you do, if you own processes, it should be right in there on your job description. I own this process and this process, and that is what I'm in charge of.
That's a great idea.
So it's a way to keep everything intact, and that way the CEO or business owner, they can go to sleep at night. They actually feel like somebody's got their eyes on it. And then the further they do this and delegate those things, the more comfortable they get with letting go of the vine, with letting go of the business, the micromanagement, and they can actually start working on their own leadership.
Yeah, I love that. You're exactly right. I mean, there's so much that goes into that, and I love the idea of almost in your job description, this person's responsible for these processes. I love that, because then you're really clear to candidates coming in, even though they don't necessarily know what that process is yet, the details of it. They have an understanding, of their area of expertise and the reflective processes that associate with that role. So it's perfect.
Yeah, I see those mistakes where we instill process into a company, and they write the processes, they hand it to somebody and say, you're in charge of that process. They never got buy-in. The person who then received it isn't passionate about that process. Yes. And they don't understand when they were given that ownership, they don't understand that they're actually really accountable for the results of the product or service that process is
for sure
they delivered. They detach from that. And so it's really up to the managers to actually get the buy-in, to explain it thoroughly as they do that, and then check in on them. And so I see that mistake made. I'll check in and say, how are those processes going? And you can see on the date when that file was last opened in Google Drive.
Yeah.
It was the day it was put in.
Yeah, it was exactly right. It was like, it's either the day it was put in or the last time somebody really had a problem with the way things are done. And they're like, well, we can redo these anytime. That's the great thing about processes, is they're living documents. If you find a better way to do this, be it manpower, software, or the steps themselves, cool. Let's streamline it. Let's make it easier. But yeah, you're right. It's always, this thing hasn't been updated in 10 years or 5 years or something like that. It's always a big number because people don't look at it. So yeah.
I'm going to go to my second point today, because I know that you've had experience in this one in your role before. So owning things. You can own projects. Usually that's usually handled pretty good, owning projects through your leadership meetings, and you get assigned, head of a project. Owning software. So this is my big one, owning software. I talked to somebody about a chat tool. Slack is a popular one I've heard this feedback with, that we use that in marketing a lot.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we tried a chat tool before. It didn't work. And I always doubt that, right? And the reason why is because they signed up for the software. They loaded the software. They got everybody logins to the software, and then crickets. That's not, first of all, you don't have anybody that owns it. Nobody owned it.
There's no advocate. Yeah, there's no advocate. Exactly.
And a lot of times software champion is a title that I've heard in this role, right?
Yep.
You have to have that champion, and defined in this category, as I look at what failure truly looks like in onboarding software, is if it's owned, that person actually may be the one responsible for finding the right software. They have to sell the leadership team and managers on why that software is the one to use and how they're going to use it. So there might be a written document. I've done the one pager on that before to leadership teams. So I get buy-in from them, because if I don't get buy-in from them, they're not going to reinforce it. They're people using it. And continued promotion and training. So training on this, I've actually done videos. I brought in the videographer in the company or sometimes outside the company. And we do like 3-part training on how to use it and why to use it. And we get them excited about it. It's not boring. Like, we actually make it exciting and fun. And we show them how it's used and how they can benefit from it. And then you have to be the person who prompts it. You start the conversations. You might put out a training or a tips every week in an email. So it's your job as the champion, as the owner of that software.
Yeah.
Again, in your job description, it might say that you own this, that you're the champion or you own this software. And your job isn't just onboard it. It's to actually make sure it's successful. That's what real ownership is, whether it's a process or software or a project. It has to be successful, not just done and complete and checkmarked.
Yes, all of that is true. You're right. I've had tons of experience in this myself. Marketing in general, the MarTech stack, as it's referred to now, right? Where there's so many technologies involved in marketing technology now, and so many companies from CRM to, analytics to everything in between. And they're all great tools. Well, they're not all great tools, but there are some really great tools out there. And as a CMO, you're like, I don't want to be a technologist all the time, right? I don't want to be the person that's responsible for integration of all of these tools. However, in a lot of cases, you have to be, because it's how your team utilizes them and creates opportunities, right? And manages the business and, their marketing activities and does a great job doing it. So you really have to. And you're right. Like, the usage of the tool and the absorption of the tool throughout the organization is incredibly difficult. CRM is a great example, because it's easy when it's inside your team, because the usage inside of the marketing team is probably advocated by some marketer who's like, we just got to do this because it's so much better for us in the long run, makes something easier, new opportunities, whatever. That's easy to do when it's just inside your own team. But when it crosses over between the sales and marketing organization, like a CRM does, it's a whole nother beast. And then trying to standardize the usage of that, and partner with their organization to make sure everybody's using it the right way. What the right way is, what's that standard,
right?
What the process is for So there's just a million things in there, but you're right. Technology is a tough one, because there's so much now where every department has unique needs for software, and who's going to be the owner of that technology and really be the subject matter expert in that technology. That's where that goes. That's the important part of that.
Well, there's usually an end result to them using that software, right? That person really wants.
Right.
It could be data. It could be they want a thriving culture. I know that my role as a CMO at a company, I was the champion of a software called 15.5. It's a great software for employee and culture. And we did this. We found the software. We implemented it. We trained department by department. And we really talked about the why we use it and how to use it. But I also think that good software doesn't need too much. Good software, you can open the gates and they pretty much roll right in with it, and it's natural for them. Bad, clunky software, they'll stop immediately. They'll get in, log in, and they look at it and they go cross-eyed and they're done. But I know this isn't about software, but it does go back to, if you want something in your company to have success, it has to have an owner. Even every service line item that you do, who's in charge of that? The processes, who's in charge of the success of that thing? service companies, product-based companies, online e-commerce. Somebody has to be in charge, or nobody's in charge, and it won't work. It will fail. So
that's right.
When a business owner is coming to me and he says, got a couple of things not working in my company. If I go into the hood with that topic, I'll find there's a lot not working in your company because nobody owns it. And usually who owns any of it is him or her, and they are in charge of all of it. And that's why it can't work and it will never work. And so when you understand that, that's when you open your mind to what's next or what I need to do different.
Yeah. And as organizations get bigger and you bring in like a chief technology officer or director of technology or something like that, the thought is then that they own all that stuff. And the truth is that it's actually the very last thing. They might be responsible for the integration physically of the tool itself into your network and, ensuring that security is good. So when people access it, you're not open to attacks or something like that. But they're not responsible for teaching people how to use the tool or becoming subject matter experts. I mean, they might along the way, but the truth is you have to find who that owner is, because they actually are the one who will orchestrate training, orchestrate integration, and also be the subject matter expert most likely too. And so, and obviously a lot of technology companies, they give you those kinds of resources to help you do all of those things. But the mindset often is, it's the technology department's job to do that. It's not. Their job is only manage the licenses and subscriptions and integrate it into your network and make sure it works correctly. And other than that, as far as usage, they could care less.
You're absolutely right.
They hope and pray you're using it, because otherwise it's a wasted investment. But
and watch the difference between you giving an owner to software success, and if they understand that their job's at stake. If it doesn't go, if it's a piece of that, right? It's a piece of how they are judged by the business owner. Whether or not they're successful is whether or not that software is successful. You will see a change in their behavior. You'll see ideas come out of the woodworks to keep that thing moving forward and becoming a core part of your processes and culture internally. And the usage will be very high. Or it could be a bad piece of software, and that person comes back and says, "Look, I've been all over it. I've done everything. The software is it's a turd. It's not going to go anywhere, right? It's not going to be useful for a company. I suggest this other thing,
Yeah, and I think as part of the owners, also, you're just like you would the process itself, or with a new person, you kind of have to. One of your roles is, as you've gone out and you get past sort of that initial phase of integration of something new, go then back to people and just casually try to get some reflection on their opinions on how well is it working? Does it do what you thought it was going to do for your organization? Is it achieving the things? Are people absorbing? Are they using it? Is it helping them? Is it from a productivity standpoint? Because that's the point. You can start to get a sense for it. I worked in an organization where they had a piece of software that drove everything in the business: inventory, cost of sale, everything. And they're a few $100 million organization. So there's a lot of transactional things going into it. But the software was 25 years old, and they'd been customizing it for years and years and years. The entire organization hated it, but they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't move. And it was a big struggle. And part of it was because there was no definitive owner. And everyone touched it, from finance to operations to technology. And I think that there was no one person other than the CEO for all of that to boil up to finally say enough's enough. Yeah. And I think I think it's a good example of exactly your point. Like, if somebody doesn't own it and people don't have a person to go to say, we've hit our lifespan on this thing, we need to find another tool, then that decision will never get made.
Yeah. And as I'm looking at a couple other things I wrote down, which things that people can own, employee rewards programs. Somebody's in charge of recognizing for birthdays, right? Somebody's got, usually HR or somebody in the company. Most companies are pretty good about finding an owner for those types of things. Google reviews is a big one for me. I see a lot of companies where they assume marketing owns Google reviews. Guess who marketing assumes own Google reviews? The sales team or the customer service department. And so a lot of times Google reviews aren't owned. And so nobody's actually seeking them out or getting them. And you can see companies that are in the millions and they have like less than 3 reviews. And then you're thinking, how? It's because nobody owns it. And so I find it very important that there's owners for everything you want successful in your company. It can be a line item. And you're like, oh, do I have to really do? Yes, you really have to assign an owner to it. And so I got to a point where anytime a new idea was brought up that I liked, I instantly would recognize that I liked it, or, hey, that's a great idea to my employees. Who in the company would own that? Because sometimes the person bringing that idea didn't want to own it, but it was just an idea. Yeah. And I just tell them, if we can find somebody in the company who would own that, I think that would be an incredible idea, and we should instill that. Yep. We should do that. And sometimes that means it keeps you from doing that thing right away, but it means that a future role that you might be considering hiring for, actually, it might be a great fit for, and you could put it on that job description.
Yeah, it might be something where you're like, we have the perfect person, and you can have that conversation and do a handoff and follow up with them and hope that they are as excited about it as you are.
You hope.
Or it's, hey, you know what? This is a great new role. This is a great opportunity to grow into something brand new. Like, I want somebody because it's so big. Like, I need somebody 100% dedicated to that thing. Because it's that important to your business. It's a game changer in some way. And when you get those, you're like, oh, what a blessing that is. It's such a great opportunity, because you're like, man, I'm going to hire somebody who has skill set in this thing that I think now is important, and let them integrate their ideas into it and make it their own.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I just wrapping this topic up of ownership. I would say, if it's going to be successful, you have to have an owner. If you want to grow and scale the business, assigning ownership and processes to other people is a way to delegate and get things off your plate so that you can grow the business, focus on the business, not be working in the business, as everybody always says. Yep. And so from a growth standpoint, it's crucial that they get these things off their plate as soon as they can. And sometimes that means it's going to be 6 months of writing processes and training others. And that's okay. There's no time limit on this. It's about quality and people. It's not about a race to quickly offload it. It is what's right for the company and the health of the business and the customers too. Yep. And so what I thought might be a boring topic, actually, I think is one of the more interesting topics when it comes to what it takes for that business owner to get out and into the positioning that he needs to be in to grow this company and grow this business.
Yes. The thing about the show that we've not articulated it this way before, but I've really been thinking about it, is this show is about empowering CEOs in a lot of different ways, and talking about things and being really transparent and honest from both of our perspectives. We're both naturally that way anyway. But being a sounding board for CEOs to change their business. And that's the point. And we both focus on growth a lot in what we do, whether we're working with CEOs or CMOs or organizations. And it's so important to talk about stuff that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about process. Nobody gives a shit. And they don't want to touch it at all.
Negative word. It's a negative word.
It is a negative word. And it doesn't have to be, because it's so like, and same thing with technology. Like all these things that you're talking about with ownership, like, owning Google reviews is just an example of a thing, like one of many, many things that needs to be owned by somebody in your marketing or sales organization or both. And this is a great way to identify leaders in your organization, people that can take things, people that can partner across the aisle with other teams, build empathy, understand problems. I mean, that fundamentally right there is what is the difference maker in great culture and bad culture, in good business and bad business. You've seen a lot of successful businesses out there who have zero empathy for customers and probably zero empathy for teams across the aisle. And talking about process, giving people ownership, talking about technology and giving people ownership, those are great ways to ensure that people understand you're valuable because you're the person that's the expert in this thing. And that means something to us as an organization. It's a difference maker, even if it's something little, like, Google reviews isn't something little, but you're a person that owns that. You're responsible for that process and figuring out what that means to us as a company and how to facilitate it. That's going to have an impact,
Well said.
Boom. So
that's a great finish. I'm gonna say that's a closer right there. And I'll pitch in that we're sponsored by Healthy Brands Coaching, and we coach these things in companies. We do have a 10-part workshop series that we do with leadership teams to help get the foundation to set them up to grow and scale, is one of the things we offer. We also do one-on-one coaching as well. So these are the type of topics that we address when we're working with leadership teams and business owners, because we want them to be successful. We truly are passionate about this, and we care because we have both been through a lot of failure in order to understand what success looks like in these areas. So yes. I hope that that's coming across in the show, and I will have another great topic for us next week, addressing something that is challenging to the CEO.
Awesome. Next time. We'll see you, buddy.
All right.